Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to discuss the topic of what does it mean to act out or act in. If you've been in a relationship with someone who is difficult, who is overly controlling, manipulative, just sort of power hungry, just sort of a little bit too difficult to have a normal conversation with. There's a lot of duplicity or concealment. Perhaps there is a lot of withholding of information or withholding of affection, communication, this sort of withdrawing that makes things very difficult in a relationship. It makes it very difficult to have open and honest communication with this type of setting, especially when there is just sort of a feeling of, trying to outsmart or dupe or just sort of get you into a position, a power position, oftentimes, which is there, at directing the flow of information and quote unquote status or leadership or what have you in the relationship. And then everyone else is just supposed to accept passively, or otherwise they will be met, with disagreement. They'll be met with conflict. They'll be met with, dirty looks. They will control by these things that are insinuations that you are off or that you are wrong. So they will try to break people down and grind people down. This can become a very difficult relationship to endure. And then the extremes, which will then set this need to sort of act out or act in. In other words, if you don't have a normal channel, a normal outlet, if you're not treated with sort of respect, if you're not communicated to openly, if there is this difficulty, a tension, something that makes it, a tension meaning, the opposite of ease or deceased. Pathological, meaning when we're getting into the abnormal. Pathological, which meaning, of disease, of pathogens, pathology, pathological lying, neglect, it becomes very severe. We enter into a zone which becomes very difficult to manage on the day-to-day. And this tension can build up and accumulate, and then it does, if it's not worked out, either within or in the process of the relationship. And so it can build in and accumulate. And if it doesn't have just sort of a proper outlet, or it's not worked out into a means that is supportive for you, it'll become, negative and destructive for you, diminishing your personal feeling of power, confidence, effectiveness, resilience, decreasing oftentimes even your physiology, your thought process. It can create just sort of this temporary feeling of like thought disorder. I can't process my way out of this. Emotions that are very uncomfortable or at inappropriate levels or inappropriate times. And so this can create a real disturbance. And then if it gets to a degree that outlet is not healthy or normal, it can be then acted in. Acted in, essentially meaning that same level of tension or conflict, I kind of vision it as you are taking the baton. You're taking that on, and then you're now doing it to yourself. So you are now basically doing a mirror or mimicking of that negative behavior. You've then now absorbed it and then digested it, and then you're then re-triggering it automatically within and reinitiating it within, and then recycling and basically turning that hurt even more severely towards yourself. So having real depressive thoughts, becoming extremely anxious or fearful, feeling like you can't go on, you can't concentrate, this is not working, or just overly worried, to the point where, you're on a coping mechanism. You might begin just having a lot of anger, and you're angry all the time. you might not then be able to concentrate or sleep or even think. You might develop like a thought disorder, or even feel like you're having sort of a midlife crisis, an identity crisis, an I am crisis, not being able to sort it all out. So acting in is when it gets to that level, that tipping point, that peak where it needs to resolve, and then it begins acted in to sort of deliver. Oftentimes if it's in the negative, then it's perpetuating that negative. So if in other words, if that difficult relationship, if it was involved in being very cold, being very sort of lack of communication, very disrespectful, then that same negative acted in you'll begin to be very disrespectful to yourself. You'll do acting in is then acting and engaging in very unself-respective behaviors unto oneself. Excuse me. So, very destructive, self-doubting, not self-supportive, not having empathy for self, not being able to think in that train of thought. So, engaging in a lot of ruinous behavior that does not make you happy. Letting your tidiness go in your house, letting your bills go, letting your eating go, letting your peace of mind go, and just acting it within. And so turning it within and perpetuating. So that then you begin then feeling very cold to oneself. You might become very withdrawn. So if this person is very withdrawn to you, you might then become self-withdrawn, more self-isolating, fearful to to take care of yourself. It can become very post-traumatic stress syndrome. It can become very traumatizing and really mimic a trauma bond. And you might then perpetuate that even further until you back it up and realize the cause that's creating the effect. And then so being able to acknowledge and validate that and saying, man, I'm going to stop that now. I'm going to get back to the healthy me that was working before. I'm going to go back to the walking. I'm going to go back to the bike riding. I'm going to go back to the hikes. I'm going to go back to the regular home cooked meals. I'm going to go back to the veggies. I'm going to go back to the fish and water. I'm going to go back to the salads. I'm going to cut out the excess drinking or the excess sugar. Oftentimes people will then resort to these self-medicating when they're trying, if they're acting it in, and overeating in the sweets, overeating in the salty foods, the fried foods, a lot of the fast food, that are very unnutritive but have a lot of the chemical stimulation, the salt and the sugars and the fats, and so that is acting in. Sort of stuffing your feelings, not listening to them. Drugging, a lot of excessive drinking and drugging will numb people out as well. Self-sabotaging, getting yourself into a lot of trouble financially. Not paying the bills, not paying the mortgage, self-sabotaging with, not keeping, your utilities paid or what have you, not keeping food around or excess. And so, that is acting in. And then acting out, is kind of then where you're doing to others what was done unto you. And then, it then becomes how you have learned to behave. And then some people will wake up and say, wow, I don't like the way that I'm handling this. I don't like the person that I've become. I don't like what I see coming out of myself. This is not how I want to be. So they'll have these moments and go, man, and that's like the kumbaya moment. It's just, and then you can then change very quickly because you have enough, leverage over yourself. You have enough image. You go, nope, I don't want to be this person staying up until 3 a.m. doing this. I don't want to be this person ruining my entire week, my entire summer, my entire life, my entire year, whatever it is, in this state. So then people really become decisive. So, and then we will then extinguish or stop those behaviors which were exemplary of the person that they did not want to be. And then you can almost see, well, that person got the best of me for a while then. It is a temporary situation. It doesn't have to be a permanent situation. This got the best of me temporarily. You need to be able to put that in perspective and in place. So you can complete and then get, but you need to be able to back up in the privacy of these videos to be able to get some personal space and to be able to navigate and say, wow, I've either been acting this in or I've been acting this out. And I was taught this feeling and I was taught this behavior from here. And I don't want that to be part of my, behavior and emotional repertoire anymore. I'm going to back off of it. I'm going to, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to suspend judgment. I'm going to take my foot off the emotional pedal. Whatever it is that you need to do to halt, to cease, to stop, to surrender, and that tension, and to say, it is not worth it. It is not worth it for me to be this angry. It is not worth it for me to be this upset. It is not worth it for me to be this confused. It is not worth it for me to be wondering all this. It's not worth it for me to be raked across the coals. It is not worth it. If you still feel it is worth it for you to be upset, then you need to go back to your self-esteem, because if you have low self-esteem, or you have not, learned to have self-esteem, or you were not taught that growing up, then you might need to do some reparative and restorative work at that level, where you do value yourself. You do realize you have true human needs, which oftentimes cannot be satisfied, acknowledged, or validated by these toxic, pathological individuals. It just cannot happen. You might wish upon a star. You might want it to be different. You might hope otherwise. But if you spend your years and decades hoping and wishing and praying upon a star, then you're just hanging it upon a star. You're not ever really lassoing it. You're not really making sure that you get it. You're not making sure that you follow through. You need to have enough self-belief and conviction and understanding that life wants that for you as well. Get the big picture. Yes, you're hearing from me, peace and harmony. Life does want you to be happy. The universe does want you to experience the joy. It might seem too hard to believe, but trust in this and trust in the process. And learn to unwind and unlearn those behaviors and those mindsets where you were either acting in the self-sabotage and the self-harm, or acting it out onto others. Where you don't like the direction that this is taking you, because you must realize that it's going to repeat with time. And all things change with time. So it's either going to become better or it's going to become worse, but change it will. So part of that is acknowledging that in life and what that means for you. And if you can really acknowledge and validate it, then you really have to understand the power that you have in your own hands. Oftentimes you had been misinformed, mistaught, received the incorrect information, not loved, not treated well, all these different things. You might have suffered at the hand of this, but you also need to understand that where you have suffered and where your needs are, so you can unlearn those and have an aha moment. Excuse me, because you might realize, oh, this is why I am suffering so much. Oh, this is the cause of my suffering. And this is a process. So it's not, it might really click into place. You might need to, really focus on your wellness and focus on your prosperity. Okay, focus on your strength and that what it means to deal with others' weaknesses. And what does that mean for you? So you might need to learn then how to deal with this weakness in others. You might need to learn how to deal with this pathology or abnormality in others, and what it means to rehabilitate and restore and to hold your ground and to be able to hold your own, but to have the positive, not just only the neutral, but also to experience the positive, which means, having a saving grace, having someone who, looks at you with heart and smiles, someone who is all there, someone who does not run away, someone who does not withdraw or put you in a corner. You have to realize what the antithesis is to kind of know what it is that you're needing to fill those appropriate sort of pockets, and being willing to embrace those, and then also to allow those to be filled in the positive. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out, peace within, and have a beautiful day. You got this. Be well and love yourself with passion. You deserve it. Be happy today.